Wife cheated for fun and justified it, so I divorced her. Now she's desperately begging to come back. I, a 30-year-old male, and my wife, a 27-year-old female, have been married for 4 years now. We got married relatively young, at least she was pretty young, but it really felt right for both of us at the time. We dated for about a year and some change, and that was enough for us. We knew we were meant to be. Though with some recent developments, I'm not sure if we truly were. I have a pretty solid job. My brothers and I operate a jewelry business together. We built it out of nothing, and we've grown it to very profitable levels, which is something to be proud of. I know people say business with family can be very hard, but honestly, for us, it's been a dream. We've never been the kind of siblings to butt heads with each other constantly, so your mileage may definitely vary. On the other hand, my wife opened a cute cafe where people could come to get pastries, drink coffee, and read books. She's always been big on books, and is one of those people who proudly makes reading their personality. Those people annoyed the crap out of me before I met her, but yeah, I'm a hypocrite. Bite me. To be honest, I was pretty enthralled with the idea because I was trying to support her. So, I did her favors by helping her pay the rent on the place she's using for the cafe. It's pretty expensive because it's in a swankier part of town, but the business is getting profitable, at least without rent to worry about, and that was enough to put a smile on my face. Now, I think that's the background you need. Here's where the actual story starts. I can't remember exactly when, but I think it was about March when she came to me to tell me about this new man who showed up at the cafe. According to her, he was very handsome. I was a secure person, and I found that the two of us could objectively talk about someone's attractiveness without it becoming a big issue. However, there was something different about the way she kept going on about this guy. Supposedly, he seemed like the kind of masculine hero that she reads about in the kind of smut women like to read. Yes, she's into those kinds of books too, as all book talk type women seem to be, and I'll never get it because it seems to be the cheesiest form of romance that gets them going. Anyway, she went on for a bit about this guy before it ended, but I will admit that the words she chose when she spoke about him were almost like how she would talk about the cold Russian hitman who fell for some woman in the laundry room of their apartment building. No, I didn't make that up. That's from an actual book that she finds interesting. Now, that was it for the day, but she let me know that he came in the next day, and they spoke at length. According to her, he was from Serbia and used to work as a car dealer, but he decided to come to the United States in search of a better life. It was taking him some time to get back on his feet and get his bearings. But he was looking for work at dealerships nearby because that was the work he knew how to do best. I learned in about 10 minutes that he was tall, blonde, handsome, dressed well, and obviously spoke with an accent. Apparently, he loved to read books set in the Wild West and was a big fan of fantasy like The Lord of the Rings. She always tells me a lot about her cafe's patrons, so it's not like this was out of the ordinary, but once again, there was really flowery verbiage at play, and it seemed like she was almost fetishizing him in a way. At a point, he wasn't novel to her anymore, so she stopped talking about him at length. But it felt a lot better to me knowing that he didn't seem to be worthy of long spiels every evening any longer. Hell, I even popped into her cafe one afternoon to bring her lunch, and I saw a guy sitting in the corner who fit the exact description. I was 100% sure it was him, and admittedly, he was a handsome guy. His name was Ivan, according to her. Now it's about at this point that things start to get a bit wild. There was a night when she got back home, and she had a goofy smile on her face, so I asked her what was up. She said Ivan had walked her home, and they had talked a lot about books on the way back. She admitted that he asked to take her out on a date, but she informed him that she was married and wouldn't be able to do that. She said he was really apologetic, held her hand tenderly, and then said goodnight and left. I remember asking her why that made her smile so widely, and her response was, "It's like something out of a book." I won't lie, that part pissed me off, because it was like she was romanticizing every single interaction she was having with Ivan. And I knew that because he was a patron of her cafe, there was no way they wouldn't keep interacting on almost a daily basis. I didn't want to seem insecure, and she could have decided to tell him that she didn't have a man, so again, I felt there was no need to talk about things, despite the fact that I felt some kind of way about it. It was just my feelings I had to get over, right? It eventually became evident to me that this wasn't the case when my wife came home about a week later with a bouquet of flowers that she promptly put into a vase. According to her, it was a gift from Ivan, nothing special. He said that he bought a bunch for a coworker. He has a job now, by the way, because it was her birthday. And he just thought it'd be nice to get her some because he always sees how hard she's working. I felt my head get hot as she said that because she was trying to paint the situation like she was a schoolgirl who didn't understand when someone liked her. I asked her straight up whether she could tell that Ivan really liked her. She said it was obvious, especially after he asked her out, but she believed the flowers were just a friendly thing. That had me baffled, because if you're a guy, you probably don't get flowers for a girl that rebuffed you, even if it was because she was married, as a friendly thing. He was still trying to get in her pants, or maybe now trying to get in her pants and leave all the rest of the lovey-dovey stuff out of it. He was having an easy time with his advances, so at the time, I knew he wasn't about to stop anytime soon. I was right because 2 days later, my wife came back home relatively later than usual, almost 2 hours late, and she didn't tell me she was going to be late. It's not like this was the first time in existence that she would come home late, so I gave her 2 calls, which weren't picked up, before deciding to give it time. But before I could call a third time, she showed up at home in a distinctly bubbly mood. "You won't believe the evening I had," was the first thing out of her mouth before she went into a whole spiel about how she had shown Ivan where the museum was. And then they went to get a slice of American pizza, because he had never had it before and always saw it in the movies. Then they walked and talked and ate pizza and a bunch of other crap I really didn't care about, but I let her finish. And when she was done, I asked her, "Are you attracted to Ivan?" She acted very shocked and offended and said, "Of course I'm not. The only person I'm attracted to in that way is you." She said she was just trying to welcome somebody who was in an unfamiliar country and had no friends or close people around him to show him around and answer his questions. I wasn't really convinced by all of this, so I told her straight up that she had to stop seeing Ivan. Yeah, that caused a big fight, quite unsurprisingly. She talked about how I was being insecure, how there was nothing there, how I should stop feeling threatened, and a lot more nonsense. I was pissed, but I was able to keep my wits about me and stop my temper from raging. I stood my ground, though, and told her that she should stop anything extracurricular with Ivan. It was fair if he came by her cafe because he was a customer, but things weren't supposed to go beyond that point. I told her to imagine what she would do in my shoes if some Serbian girl came to buy a bracelet, and I started taking her walking around town and all that. According to her, she'd understand, but I think we all know that's a lie, don't we? Long story short, I slept on the couch. No one is shocked there. But the good thing is that I stopped hearing about Ivan and all his drama, which was enough for my mental health. Again, I knew that she would be interacting with him at her cafe, but there was only so much that could happen there. And it seemed pretty sure that nothing was going on because she was heading back home at the regular time each night, which was good by me. I became very suspicious when I walked into my wife's cafe randomly one afternoon, and she wasn't there. Neither was Ivan, though I couldn't have been sure that he would have been there at that time anyway, so that didn't mean much. But what did mean much was that she wasn't there, because that was very unusual. I thought of sticking around until she came back or asking one of her employees where she had gone, but I decided not to make a big deal of it. It was when I was getting back into my car from across the street that I saw her and Ivan coming up the street, arms interlocked. It took every single ounce of strength in me not to run across the street and beat the crap out of the guy and cuss her out, but somehow I stayed in the car, watched them walk into the cafe, and I drove off. That happened yesterday, and I've really struggled to process it. I wanted to confront her about it as soon as she got home, but I think there's a lot of power in knowing something that the other person doesn't know. You know? It'll make it easier for me to see through other lies that might be told. Case in point, when she got back home, I asked her how her day was. And she described a pretty plain day without any mention of going somewhere, I have no idea where, with Ivan. So, this is why I'm here. Should I confront her straight up, or should I try to find out more of the truth before that point? I'm tending toward the latter because I'm starting to think there might be something going on under my nose, and I feel like confronting her might result in all the chances of finding the truth dissolving. Let me know what you guys think, please. Your wife's coffee shop sounds adorable, a haven for book lovers and caffeine addicts alike. And then enter Ivan, the Serbian heartthrob straight out of a romance novel, tall, handsome, and with an accent thicker than a Russian novel. I mean, who wouldn't be intrigued by this real-life character? Your wife's enthusiastic descriptions of Ivan were almost romantic. I get it, we all have our literary crushes, but seeing her swoon over Ivan like he's Fabio on the cover of a bodice ripper might make anyone's blood boil, especially when she starts comparing him to her smutty book heroes. Ivan's charming advances and just a friendly gesture bouquet of flowers, right? Because nothing says platonic friendship like romantic flowers from a guy who's been rebuffed. I'm sure Ivan's next friendly gesture involves a candlelit dinner and a horse-drawn carriage, and the late-night walks, shared pizza, and giggly museum visits. It sounds like Ivan is checking off boxes on a rom-com date montage. Your wife's reaction, sparkling eyes and all, probably didn't help ease your concerns. Her insistence that there's nothing to worry about feels like those horror movie scenes where the clueless character says, "It's just the wind," right before getting axed. Update 1. Hey guys, it's me, the guy from that post about the wife with the cafe and the Serbian man. Well, I'm back with a pretty big update. Let's talk about it because I found a lot. It took me a bit to gain the courage, but I decided at a point that I had to find out the truth no matter what it would cost. I have never been the kind of person to smile upon the idea of checking your partner's phone, but in this case, I knew I had to put whatever moral conundrums I had aside and do it. So I did it at the first chance I got, which was while she was asleep. Unsurprisingly, she had Ivan in her messaging app and they had been talking a lot. It was WhatsApp, so it was easy for me to export the entire conversation to a text file, which I sent to my phone from her phone. I made sure to delete the evidence, of course. I looked through her gallery and found a few pictures of them smiling together in public places, but nothing extra incriminating. I sent those to my phone too. Again, evidence was deleted. That took me about 5 minutes to do all of that, and I put her phone back where it belonged. After that, I did all the reading on my phone, where it was a lot less suspicious in case she woke up suddenly. And boy, did I see things that made my head spin. Here's a transcript of one part of the conversation that you might find as appalling as I did. It came after a point where they were discussing some book that my wife had recommended to him. Let's call my wife Clarice instead of her actual name, Ivan. In a way, the main characters remind me of us. Clarice. Yes, that's what I thought too. The big mysterious hunk and the artsy girl who was torn between him and her boyfriend. Ivan, and a lot of steamy sex scenes. That part especially reminds me of us. Clarice, I agree, the sex is always good, but in your case, it's a husband. Ivan? Clarice. Yes, and I think that's what makes it even more exciting and fun. It feels so wrong. I've never cheated before, but I can't say I properly regret it. Ivan, it is wrong, but that's what makes it so hot. Clarice, yep, and I never want this to end. It drove me insane. It was 2 a.m., and I left the house to go on a walk because I couldn't stay behind her at that point. I would have done something crazy. I was almost sure of it. I feel like I walked around town aimlessly for 5 hours, but by the time I got back, it was only 3:10 a.m. She was still sleeping too. Do you know what it's like to find out you're being cheated on, but then to find out your wife is ridiculing you by actually enjoying doing everything behind your back? She was basically reveling in my ignorance of the situation, and that was the part that drove me over the edge, not that cheating was going to be forgiven anyway. When I got back, she was still sleeping, so I grabbed her phone, jumped to that part of her conversation with Ivan, and took a video of it on her phone. I needed to make it very clear that there was no doctoring going on here. It was clear that Clarice felt like she was living out one of her stupid books. But it was absolutely despicable that I had to be a victim in all of it. She has no idea that I know this, but the divorce is cooking up. There's really no other way for this to go. I also need to see her go down. I need to see Ivan go down too. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I need both of them to hurt, and I need them to hurt badly. Honestly, anyone in your shoes would have done the same. Reading that chat must have felt like being punched in the gut repeatedly. The whole reminds me of us and steamy sex scenes part, her reveling in the excitement of cheating. That's a special kind of betrayal. Kudos for keeping your cool and going for a walk. If it were me, I'd probably have ended up on the evening news, but you handled it like a pro. You even took a video of the chat for proof. Nicely done. Now you've got the smoking gun, so divorce is on the horizon, and honestly, that's the best route. Clarice clearly thinks she's living out some kind of torrid romance novel, but she's about to get a reality check. As for Ivan, I hope he enjoys his time in Fantasyland because you're about to drop a reality bomb on both of them. Update 2, it's been done, and it was glorious. This is the final saga of the Serbian man Ivan and the book-loving, treacherous, cheating wife Clarice. In this whole thing, they had no idea they should have been a lot more worried about me than they were. Let me rush through the boring parts of the story. Clarice went to work one day, and I parked across the street in an Uber. I watched as the process server walked into the cafe and handed her the divorce papers in a very public manner. That was very pleasing. After that, we drove off. I went to work, had a great day, and there wasn't a single message or missed call from Clarice by the end, which was very pleasing to me. She knew she had been found out, and there wasn't anything begging was going to do, at least, that's how I saw it. Well, that night, she came back crying rivers, snot pouring out of her nose. She looked like an absolute wreck. Honestly, I felt a twinge of sadness seeing her like that. Blame it on the fragments of love that were left. But it didn't last long. She kept asking what she did wrong. Was it Ivan? Was it Ivan? I realized she didn't know how much I knew. And she must have tried to figure out if she had leaks in her operation before she could figure out what I knew. I couldn't tell whether it was better to tell her I knew about Ivan or not, but in the end, I made a promise. I told her I saw her and Ivan walking arm in arm that day, and I had been holding it in, but I didn't let her in on anything else at that point. She suddenly got emboldened and started half begging, half calling me stupid. According to her, there was no reason to divorce her over that. Yes, she was wrong for still seeing him, but no, there was nothing happening between them, and I was being insecure. I was being jealous. She couldn't tell whether to grovel or insult me, apparently. In the end, I told her to get out of my house. Which she did. Fast forward to the actual divorce phase, that part was loads of fun for me. I have a lot more money than her, which in a divorce means there's a lot more to lose. But it also means there's a lot more to spend on good lawyers, which I made sure to do. When you get a divorce, get a good lawyer. I promise you all that it is worth it, because not only did I have a lot of pictures of the two of them after a point where I had mentioned my concerns about it, but I had the text messages to clearly demonstrate the infidelity. On top of that, my rock star of a lawyer was able to point out transactions in our joint account that seemed to have been spent on Ivan. He aligned dates on some transactions with dates in the entire text message transcript where he thanked her for certain things, and it became very clear that she was spending our money on her Serbian lover boy. The lawyer did a good job of painting her like a gold digger too, which was fun to watch for me. She fought her best, but honestly, there was nothing to point out for me. I am not a perfect guy, but I definitely don't have any divorce-worthy flaws. By the time the divorce was over, I really had everything I needed. I kept my house, I kept my car, and because of that pretty notable infidelity and the fact that I had set her up with a money-making venture, there was no alimony requested of me. Love you, Judge. She did get to keep the car that I bought for her. I didn't feel I needed to stress myself about that, and it made it easier to take what I took when she didn't leave the divorce entirely empty-handed. Now, this is my favorite part. It was hard for me to get back at Ivan. It was very hard, but one day, he was walking out of the cafe, and I followed him down the road and around the corner. I called his attention, introduced myself, and slugged him square in the jaw. It hurt like crazy, but I busted his lip and knocked him to the ground with it, and he looked very shocked. I wasn't looking for a street fight, but I would have taken one if it came. I think he realized he had no moral high ground on this one because he stood up and left after that. It felt good. I wish I could have done more because he knew he was messing with a married woman, but that was enough for me, and probably all I could have realistically gotten without a felony charge. And then, Clarice, you know that rent that I was paying for her? It was due again. And because she had her cafe in such a nice part of town, it was expensive. It was usually due on May 1st, but it was only toward the end of May that she came to me crying on the phone, saying that she needed to pay the rent for the cafe badly, and she didn't have the money for it. She begged and begged and begged, but I told her to sell the car to get the funds for it before I hung up the phone. She called several times throughout that week, but I didn't pick up the phone. Spoiler, I found out she sold the car when she called me to start cursing me out. She said it was evil that I couldn't help her at her very lowest. I told her it was evil to think that it was fun and exciting to cheat on me. She couldn't say anything to that. I'm waiting for May next year to see how she struggles with rent. If the gods have their way, she'll lose the cafe too, especially without access to my bookkeeper any longer. It's been sweet, honestly. I'm newly single, with a lot of money and a lot of satisfaction. I won't say that the divorce, betrayal, and infidelity didn't hurt like hell, because it did, but you can only move forward, right? That's what I'm going to do. Thanks to you all for sticking around and for your words of encouragement and advice. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, I'll never have to write a post again. See you. Clarice coming home crying and snotting everywhere? Priceless. I can almost picture her trying to toggle between groveling and calling you stupid. She really thought she could spin the arm-in-arm story into some harmless friendly stroll like, oh no honey, he's just my walking buddy, right? Because that's totally normal. And the divorce? You played that like a maestro, bringing in a rock star lawyer and nailing her with the evidence. Plus, those transactions aligning with her little love messages, that's courtroom gold. Watching her get painted as a gold digger must have been pure satisfaction. Keeping the house, the car, and avoiding alimony? That's the jackpot. And Clarice selling her car to pay rent? That's just poetic justice. Her calling you evil? Hilarious. She had no leg to stand on. Here's hoping she loses the cafe next year too. Karma's a relentless companion. So, here you are, newly single, loaded with cash, and a satisfying victory under your belt. Surely it hurt like hell, but you've come out on top. Hats off to you, and thanks for sharing this epic tale. What do you think of OP's revenge? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Tune in next time.